Hey guys, it's Kendra.
And this is Jessica, and you're listening to
Lucid Lab. We're getting a little bit of a late start. I've been running around like a crazy person today. I have to leave town tomorrow morning, and just trying to get everything done before taking off is just too stressful. But I'm happy to just be here and not have to think about that for the next couple hours.
And this episode had to be put together quicker than I thought I had to, because I was not looking at the schedule, because this is a really busy week for me. And I did not realize I was losing 2 days on putting it together. So
it's just the way it was. My last episode, I think I shared, I wrote it the night before, and I think you're in the same boat this week. But we're going to catch up.
Yes, we will. There's just a lot of traveling going on right now, but we still want to give you something every week.
Yeah, we don't want to have to do too many reruns. I almost thought about that this week. I was like, maybe we should just do a rerun, but we do want to keep those as more of a
desperate measure.
Yes. But I do have a lot of travel coming up. I'm in a new role within my job, and that's just requiring more than I've had in the past, but it should chill out by like May, maybe. I don't know. I
mean, I hope.
And but then I have personal travel.
I know, and all of hers is international. It's not simple. It's an entire day to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Which adds days to us not being able to do stuff and shortens other things. So
yeah. Anyways, I don't have much to talk about because that's been my week. It's just getting ready to go out of town for another week and trying to edit our last episode before I left town because I don't like to travel with 2 laptops.
No, and especially with everything going on in this country right now, I would rather not travel with any devices.
I know. I'm going to clear my cell phone before I come back into the country because we're hearing scary things. I do have the privilege of being a white girl, so I'm not going to be profiled as easily, unfortunately, as others, but it's still a gamble.
I was just listening to this one lady on TikTok who said, just because you're a citizen, just because you're white, don't think you're safe, because men are seeing these other men not in uniform, wearing masks, abducting people off the streets.
Yes.
And they don't have to say who they are. They don't have to show badges. They just get to take people. How long is it going to be before a man or a group of men say, hey, I can pull
do this
that
too.
off?
I know. It is kind of scary because ICE is the main group taking people, and they just look like anybody off the street.
Everyday people, and they're driving everyday cars.
I know. So
how are we supposed to know if it's a kidnapping? I mean, they're all kidnappings.
Yes.
But I mean,
government-run kidnapping.
Exactly.
Versus just a crazy person
who's like, I can do that.
I want to kidnap women.
And they can't question me.
Yeah.
Because with us being aware that ICE is out there and whatnot, are those people reporting it to the police? Or are they just assuming that's what it is? It's ICE.
We're in some dangerous territory here right now. Yes, we are.
Anyway, happy note, although it's been nothing but chaos. It's been a crazy, crazy week with work, this whole possibly moving thing. Yeah. I have to make a decision in the next few days, and that's really putting a lot of stress on me. And my daughter had her talent show last night, and because her teacher thinks she's the best or whatever, she put her last, and it was like 1 out of 38. And my daughter didn't go on stage until like 9:20 at night. And she's in elementary school.
Yeah, that's not cool.
And I was like, oh my God, I sat there for like 3.5 hours.
Were their parents leaving?
That's what sucked, is by the end of it, yes. Once their kid was done, they left.
Because some kids' bedtime is probably 9 p.m.
8.
Yeah.
I felt bad for her in that moment because she put her to be last to close out the show because like she thought she was one of the best. But I'm like, but then nobody was really here to see that. I mean, just a fraction.
Or everybody's just over it by then. When you've listened to 38 people, you're like, okay, keep it going. You know, like that's too long. They need to keep it to like 10 or something. Like I remember having to go with my kids when they were younger for orchestra concerts, and they would make us stay. Like they wouldn't let the kids leave. And it's like parents don't want to sit there and listen. I mean, I don't know, maybe this is a hot take, but I don't care to listen to other people's kids play an orchestra. Like I'm there to see my child, and they're like, well, it's rude to leave. I'm like, but I don't want to sit there through 3 other orchestra concerts. And I mean, they're already painful to listen to because kids aren't that great at it in middle school.
Yeah, it's a preference, you know, classical, and then to have to hear the learning curves.
I'm there to support my child, and when I'm done, we need to get home and finish homework,
it's hard.
Eat dinner, and instead I have to sit there for 3 hours to listen to other kids that I don't even know. So.
I know, it's rough. I probably would have stayed stayed till the end just because my daughter is definitely one of those, let me stay and support my friends. It was rough. You know, my back was hurting where we were sitting, but she did amazing. She sang Tomorrow from Annie. And it was really cute. We were leaving because she actually goes on a spring break next week.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the teachers, she sang goodbye outside. She's like, goodbye, Mrs. blah, blah, blah. And she's like, goodbye. I will not see you tomorrow. It was really cute. And she gave her a big old compliment. And that was fun. But yes, it totally dug into our night. And we were supposed to do like 2 hours of homework last night too.
Yeah.
And she fell asleep trying to accomplish just a little bit of it by the time we got home. Anyway, we're tired. We tried to pull something together for you.
And I don't even know what you're doing.
I know.
So what did you find?
Switched.
As we always do.
Just because I did not have as much time once I realized what our schedule was, I was like, whoa, I cannot cover this. So today we are covering a serial killer. But it's not your typical serial killer.
Okay.
He didn't become a serial killer until he was behind bars.
Interesting. Like, so he's killing other inmates?
Yes.
Oh.
This is the case of Robert Maudsley, or otherwise known as the Brain Eater,
Ew.
or Hannibal the Cannibal.
Okay, I may have heard of this. I don't know.
It's one of those stories where I'm going to dispel some myths.
Okay.
And it's myths that made this story infamous.
Mm-hmm.
Which is ridiculous because media has a way of starting a rumor and then the world runs with it.
Of
and
course.
That doesn't mean it's not interesting to say these myths are not real. It is interesting. It's tragic, though.
Okay.
It's a famous killer out of the UK.
Okay.
There's not a ton of information to this story. It's just the meat of it that really keeps people going because it's still in the headlines and it makes it intriguing in that way.
Well, Brain Eater definitely catches your attention.
It certainly does. But who is Robert? Robert John Maudsley was born June 26, 1953 in Speke, Liverpool, England. He was the fourth of what would be 12 children.
Lots of kiddos.
Which to me is a red flag already.
Uh-huh.
And this is my opinion, but there's no need to have that many children.
Did they have a farm? Because that's like back in the day, they would get farm labor that way. I don't know. My parents were born around the 50s and my mom came from a family of 8 and they couldn't afford them. They just kept having them. I think back then maybe just birth control wasn't around. I don't know.
It's just still not good.
No, never.
And that's going to be the case here. His parents were no good.
Okay.
Their names are George and Jean. There's not a ton known about his childhood, but enough to see why he turned out the way he did.
Okay.
When he was just 6 months old, he and his 3 older siblings, Kevin, Paul, and Brenda, were removed from the home due to parental neglect and placed into care at the Catholic Nazareth House in Crosby, Liverpool. After this, their parents would go on to have 8 more children.
Stop them. Like, don't let them.
And how those children were never removed, I don't know, because Robert and his 3 siblings would stay there for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Being removed from his parents at just 6 months, this Catholic orphanage was all he knew.
And I'm sure they were not the best place to be raised.
Yeah, it was run by nuns, specifically the Order of the Poor Sisters of Nazareth. The story that has passed around forever is that they thrived there. But I'm going to disagree. Despite what Robert has said about his time there, he said the nuns and the other children were his family. We can interpret that in other ways now, just coming off of my residential school episode. It doesn't take much imagination to think about what went on at this orphanage and what type of abuse Robert and his siblings experienced growing up.
Right.
Could it have been less than others? Yeah, because people pick their victims, but there is no way they were without trauma, having grown up there.
No, just any child who is put into orphanage is going to have some kind of trauma because they feel rejected by their own parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's probably not the most touchy-feely, loving home.
Yeah. These orphanages, of which there were many throughout England, Wales, and Scotland, were much like the residential schools. Instead, they took in abandoned children or uncontrollable children or those removed from their families. Much has come out about how these homes were run, and it's the same thing. Abuse, physically, emotionally, sexually. Children in need of kind, warm, loving care and comfort did not find it.
No.
These were places of fear.
Yep.
Children were hit with belts, canes, sticks, broom handles, hairbrushes, shoes, and wooden crucifixes.
Yeah.
Carbolic soap was forced into their mouths. Their heads were banged together. They were made to kneel in corridors for very long periods of time. And this was part of their daily life.
Right.
Runaways were beaten when they were returned. Bedwetters were humiliated.
Aww.
Just sad.
That's sad. They can't help it.
They were beaten, put into cold baths. They were made to wear wet sheets, and they were called names by the nuns.
Ugh.
Children were force-fed and or denied food. They had to queue for a bath in a state of undress. So they were not wearing clothes. And then they had to share bath water.
Ew.
That was either too hot, too cold, or just disgusting by the time you got to it.
Yeah, if you weren't the first or third, you're like number 10. Ew.
Emotional abuse included, like I said, humiliation, coercive control, insults, denigration, unjustified punishments. Children were locked in cupboards. They were routinely separated from their siblings and punished if they tried to make contact with them. And there was persistent sexual abuse of both boys and girls, and even some nuns facilitating the abuse of girls by men.
With the priests.
Priests.
Ugh. Why do we get this in so many episodes? Catholic Church has a lot to answer for.
They really fucking do.
It's harboring all kinds of pedophiles and probably still is today.
I'm not going to go into more about this house just because we did have a big dose of it and what happens at Catholic run homes.
Right.
But it's just as despicable. And they started in the 1800s as well over there, with the main focus lasting for that like 50 years between 1933 and 1984.
Okay.
Hundreds, maybe thousands have come out to demand justice for the abuse that occurred in these homes. But from my quick research, because I didn't have time to do a deep dive on this, is even though Nazareth House isn't caring for children anymore, and many of these homes are closed, some are still open today and now care for the elderly.
Oh, shit. They're doing just as bad of things to them, I'm sure. Elder abuse is a big problem.
I know.
In nursing homes already.
The exact same home where Robert and his siblings went is still open today, but now for the elderly.
Okay.
I don't put it past them to be just as horrible. I personally hate that no matter how many people have come forward about these homes, they're still allowed to continue.
Right.
There are a lot that have closed, but the ones that continue, I'm like,
why?
We know what happens in these homes.
Yeah.
I worked at a nursing home. I firsthand know how nasty they can be to the residents, but people put their parents in these homes and leave reviews. So I don't know.
I think it's just people don't want to have to deal with it. So it's easier to just keep it open, even if they're being abused, because where else would those people go? Because family members don't want to take them in. And it's a moneymaker.
Well, that. And I feel like you're an adult who's put your parents in there. You don't realize that once your parent is elderly, they become just as vulnerable as a child.
Yes.
And they become just as easily manipulated as a child.
True.
So even though they're like, yes, I'm happy here, their nurse might be around the corner and that's their fucking abuser.
Right.
So you have to be very careful when you're like, how are you doing, Mom? How are you doing, Dad? Because they're scared to say something because you're going to leave and they will have no one.
Right. They're trapped.
They're trapped. Yeah. So that's what comes into my mind. Like I said, I have firsthand experience and I don't believe any review on a website from a Catholic run nursing home.
Yeah.
So Robert and his siblings were there for 9 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yes. Especially if you're being mistreated for 9 years straight at a very impressionable age.
And that's where I have to be careful because there's no evidence of any specific abuse that they experienced there other than what we know goes on at these places. We can only speculate. But at least he wasn't alone. He did have his siblings there. And even though it is known that many siblings were separated at these homes, it was very intentional.
Right.
He did get to know his siblings and were close with them. So he still had that.
Okay.
Either way, I know there's nothing easy about growing up in any orphanage. You know, just the rules, whatever. But like I said, if you were to go listen to this episode from other people, they describe this time in his life as him thriving.
Okay. Was he?
He was 6 months when he went to them. What are you comparing it to, really?
Yeah.
You can't say that. You honestly can't. All you can say is what he had was probably better than what he would have received at home.
Right. Or on the streets.
Exactly. To me, their basic needs were being met. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. But probably not all their emotional and mental well-being.
No, just
for sure.
like they're getting their food, they have a bed, they get to have a bath. They're not being neglected in that way. But that's going to change because even though their parents popped out 8 more kids, they wanted them back.
Interesting. Okay.
These are essentially strangers to him.
Yeah, they're now 9 years out.
He was a
6
baby.
months. Yeah.
He had seen them a few times. They came to visit the kids like randomly, but still they were strangers to him then. He's like, oh, these are my parents.
Mom.
All I know is I'm here because they were bad.
Right.
To me. And his parents didn't want them back because they missed them so much.
Why did they want them back?
It was triggered by something else. Apparently, there was a family that wanted to adopt one of Robert's older brothers. And that's when his parents were like, wait, no, we liked when they were at a home that we could visit once a year over the years and someone was taking care of them, but they can't actually go to another family.
Okay, they're jealous.
So they stopped the adoption process and they got them back. And I'm not sure how they did. It makes no sense to me other than maybe the church just being like, well, someone take them.
They're older now. They'll be fine.
We don't care.
Yeah.
So suddenly Robert is living in a home with 11 other children in this like 2 to 3 bedroom house. And he's now under the care of 2 strangers he was initially taken away from because of neglect.
And so I'm sure neglect came right back.
And this house was in shambles. It was dirty.
Okay.
I really don't know how these kids were given back. They must have not looked at anything.
Yeah. They're just like, sure, take them. You look okay.
And the abuse started right away.
Oh, no.
And it seemed to be focused on Robert and his 3 older siblings, which makes me feel horrible for the older brother that was about to be adopted.
Probably by a loving family.
Exactly. He might have been able to actually
have a life, like a family, you know, love.
And it was just ripped away from him. But George, their father, he got off on this abuse.
Ugh.
From what I could find, the mother, Jean, she didn't necessarily hurt the children herself physically, but she didn't stop him from doing anything. She didn't speak up about it. In fact, she would get the abuse started by complaining to George about how they've been misbehaving, knowing full well it was going to result in their beatings.
Maybe she also got a kick out of watching it. People are sick. I mean, if they like each other.
I don't have any more information about her, but to have that many children, it reminds me of Rose West.
Yes.
How she loved being pregnant, but
didn't want the actual
fucking
children.
Hated the children.
Mm-hmm. And some people like babies, but then when they're not baby stage anymore, they don't want to take care of them anymore.
It's like wanting kittens or puppies.
Yes.
But then abusing them once they're grown up. And I'm like, kittens and puppies only last for a few months, guys.
And I think people do the same with children, unfortunately.
The kids did not have beds. There were like a couple, but there were 12 of them.
It's a 2-bedroom house. Yeah.
So most slept on the floor on clothes.
Yeah.
They were often locked in rooms and withheld food. At one point, Robert became his father's fixation.
Okay.
He was locked in a room for 6 months.
What?
And soon he became his father's sexual victim.
Oh, gross. That's horror.
It always lands here.
Why is this so prevalent?
When he was locked in the room, his father would come in several times a day just to beat him for no reason with anything he could find, anything he could think of, a belt, a stick, a bar. Once he broke a rifle into beating him.
Oh my God, those are heavy.
Or he went in to rape him. Every time he was left in horrible pain, this child.
Of course.
With no way to tend to his injuries and no connection with his siblings.
Right.
And his father did all of this laughing. Like he would literally leave the room laughing.
What a sicko.
And this guy, he also used his children to steal things. So he put them to work.
Okay.
He made them steal lead off of the roofs of homes, among other things.
Okay.
He wanted them to do this, but he didn't want them getting caught. Over time, the kids were known to be troublemakers for their thievery. And if it got back to their father, they were horribly beaten.
Okay.
How confusing is that going to be for these kids? They were brought up by nuns, the scripture, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But consistently, abused, let down by people who are supposed to keep them safe. And now they're made to go against everything they've been taught.
Yeah, now they're out committing crimes on behalf of their parents or their father specifically.
And when they don't get it right, they're being beaten.
Yeah. They're like, I'm 11. I'm not going to be a master thief, dude. Like, come on. I'm going to get caught.
So there's that. But at some point, the abuse of Robert and of just Robert, like there was abuse to all of them, but it was very
targeted,
intense with Robert. It became made known to the authorities either at some point or his dad just decided, I don't want him anymore.
Okay.
Which I don't know how it works over there, but you can't just drop your kid off somewhere.
You're like, I'm done.
Like people
I've abused him as much as I want.
Have this one. I want to keep the other 11. But then how do they only take one and leave the other 11? It's a very confusing part of the story for me because he alone is taken to be put in foster care. The rest are left.
Interesting. Yeah, you would think they would take them all because obviously there's an abuser.
And they're in a tiny little place.
My guess would be the system's just overloaded like it is now present day. So many kids fall through the cracks.
The only other thing I can think of is that the state doesn't know they have all these other children. If they're not on record or something.
They show up and they hide them all.
I have no idea how he's the only one that leaves this place.
Yeah.
But he does.
Please tell me his foster family doesn't abuse him too.
Well, I mean,
it's always just this vicious cycle for these poor children. Like they never have a chance.
I know. When he leaves, his father decides to tell his 11 other siblings that Robert didn't just leave, he's dead.
Oh, okay.
And now Robert had no one.
Yeah.
And once again, he was with strangers, but this time...
And how old is he right now?
No siblings. He's 10.
Okay.
He'd been through so much, literally since the moment he could breathe.
Yes.
This poor child.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And for the next 6 years, he would bounce from foster home to foster home. Like you said, who knows what abuse he experienced in these places. He's for sure really messed up. He's acting out. He was arrested for theft at one point.
Yeah.
But as soon as he could, he ran away. So at 16, he decided enough was enough.
Yeah, I could see.
And he was like, I would rather be homeless.
I could see it. Yeah.
He did odd jobs for a while in different parts of the country at first before he decided to settle in London.
Okay.
He started using drugs, and to pay for that, he became a child male prostitute.
Oh, that's sad.
He was desperate. And he had plenty of clients because we live in a fucking sick world where there are predators aplenty.
Yes.
Which is just ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that he knew I can make money if I just offer myself. Yeah. So that tells me in those 6 years, he experienced much of the same probably with his father.
Right.
And sadly, this is the life that he lives for the next 5 years. Meanwhile, his mental health is severely declining. He ends up in multiple psychiatric wards during this time after several suicide attempts.
Okay.
And he starts talking about hearing voices in his head. They were telling him that he needed to kill his parents.
I mean, can you blame him?
No. He was never diagnosed with anything, but considering that his life was nothing but control, abuse, and instability from the moment he was born, it wouldn't be at all surprising that he would have developed some kind of multiple personality disorder or something.
For sure. Trauma aplenty in his life is going to make him splinter off.
He's like the perfect specimen, really.
Yeah.
And he was open about all of this with hospital staff.
And they did nothing.
A cry for help, multiple cries for help. And yet he is continuously let go to go fend for himself, homeless, with drugs, with all these thoughts in his head.
Right.
He's consistently let down by those who should be caring for him.
Yeah.
And while being a sex worker, it's really cemented within him this hate for older men who prey on children.
I'm there
and
with
young
him.
Men, girls.
Yeah, I have that same philosophy.
And just rapists in general.
Yeah, he saw the worst of the worst.
And yes, this is how he's getting by. But more and more, he is being abused by these older men during these exchanges. And he was raped by one man who was just supposed to be an acquaintance. And so this loathing for them is just increasing and intensifying in a way that he couldn't control.
Yeah.
You need to understand, like, he had this huge history leading up to that.
Right.
And he has this now fixation on killing his parents.
Okay.
And he never goes through with killing killing his parents, but he does end up reaching a boiling point with one John.
Okay.
And this will be his first murder.
Okay.
He does say later that if he had killed his parents, no one else would have died.
Oh, so he was like killing other people as a substitute for what he really wanted to do.
He blames his parents for everything, which we can't deny. They were literally the reason for his entire life being what it was.
Yep.
But I'm not sure that I can believe that he would have stopped killing. In fact, I don't think so, because I think that kind of pain and trauma just doesn't go away.
No.
But maybe in his mind, that would have been the ultimate killing for him and why he thinks he would have been able to stop that rage.
Right.
I just doubt it unless he was able to get actual help.
Yeah.
That type of memory would have lasted and like sprung up all the time for him.
Yeah, it wouldn't have given him full closure.
No, he was too traumatized.
Yeah.
He needed help and he tried to get it. That's what's fucked up.
Yeah, and they were just like, okay, you're good. Bye.
So Robert is 21 years old.
Okay.
As the story goes, and the most popular version is that Robert met with a regular client, John Farrell, who is 30 years old.
Okay.
They were intimate, and then at some point, John felt comfortable enough to share a little secret with Robert. He went and got a stack of photos and showed them to Robert. And supposedly, they were all photos of John sexually assaulting young boys.
Oh, no.
This triggers a rage in Robert, and he kills him.
Yeah.
He then immediately turns himself in and says that he needs psychiatric care.
Yes.
And that is how he is taken into custody and eventually becomes a serial killer behind bars.
Okay.
That is the first murder. But if we go a little deeper and hear what Robert has to say about the crime, you can see that it's more than just revenge on pedophiles and rapists.
Okay.
He had or has this urge to kill, and he is pretty ruthless about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Robert lays out the entire 24 hours or so leading up to the murder, and I think this is a pretty controversial case. For a lot of people, it's like black and white. They love him. Let him go.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. Does he have a chance for redemption? Maybe.
I mean, I can see people kind of looking at him as a Punisher-like thing where it's like, no, he killed a pedophile. So this is the kind of guy we want out there murdering. Right. But it is a fine line.
It is a fine line because he's still a murderer. And I don't think, at least at this point in his life, he could control himself as much.
Yeah.
But he does show control. So let me go into this. So it starts with Robert waking up one day knowing that he wanted to hurt someone.
Okay.
Kill someone. The thing was, he didn't know who yet.
Mm-hmm.
He just wanted to do it. He couldn't get it off his mind. It was all he could focus on. So he goes to the West End in London with a knife to search for a victim.
Okay.
I guess he didn't find the lucky guy there, so he left, and then he went to this place called Playland Amusement Arcade.
Okay.
This place deserves its own episode. Oh my God. The rabbit hole I could have gone down with this too. It was essentially a hub for older men to sexually exploit young men and boys, 21 and younger, some very young.
Oh my God.
It was an arcade at Piccadilly Circus where teenagers and young men met up, but it was a very dark place to wander into if you were a child genuinely interested in playing games.
That's really scary.
So I guess you could say he was specifically looking for a certain type of person. I feel like that could be argued, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He went somewhere. He's like, not any person's going to do. Let me go to this place where I know that there are predators.
Right.
At first, he didn't see anyone he wanted to murder. And then he ran into John Farrell. And it might be Farrell. John had been hanging out with another young boy there.
Oh.
But after chatting with Robert for a minute, he decided to leave with him.
Oh.
They go back to John's apartment. And from the information I could find, it kind of seemed like they had a bit of a friendship, or maybe just because it was like this long-standing client of his.
Okay.
It just was more than just paying for sex.
Okay.
He made Robert some tea first, and then they talked. At some point, Robert managed to go sit down on the mattress and slip his pocket knife, between the mattresses while John was making this tea. After tea, they get in bed. Robert made sure to be on the open side of the bed to have better access to this knife.
Okay.
They started kissing and masturbating each other. And I guess during this time, he was thinking of killing him.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also actively trying to talk himself out of it. And he did for the time being. He told himself, let's just do this stuff. We're going to get some sleep and I'll see how I feel in the morning. Which is also why I question just how close he was with this guy. Because I didn't think like a sex exchange for money would include spending the night and chit-chatting and all of that.
Yeah, they're definitely closer than just appointment or whatever you call it.
So they finish what they were doing and they try to go to sleep, but they were having a hard time falling asleep. So they kind of whisper talk to each other for a while until they fall asleep. And that's another reason. I'm like, you're kind of friends or consider yourselves like dating in some way. I don't know.
Right.
When Robert woke up in the morning, he said he still wanted to hurt him.
No.
So he got up and he tried to kind of talk himself out of it. Again, he got himself a cup of tea. He tried to calm his mind. At some point, John wakes up too. They have breakfast together. Robert's getting ready to leave. And at some point, he had already put the knife back in his coat pocket.
Okay.
But it was at this same time that John, this is his description, decides to show him those photos.
Oh, yep. And that brings it up.
It's not clear if these are underage boys or just young men like him because he's young.
Right.
18 and over, but still young, you know?
Yes. Still being exploited.
I don't know. But it was at this point that Robert takes his knife out of his pocket, rushed across the room and stabs John in the chest.
Okay.
He fell back onto the bed, but got up and tried to make a run for the door, but he trips over the chair and then Robert stabs him in the back several times. Robert explains that as he did this, he could see John's face and told him that he was sorry, but that he had to do it.
Okay. The voices told him to.
After that, he decided to clean himself up in the bathroom. Now, I'm not sure of the entire confession, but there are some parts missing because Robert also apparently garroted him and then hit him in the head with a hammer.
Okay, yeah, that takes it a little bit deeper.
I don't know the order. All I know is he was trying to make certain that he was dead. The version told for the most part is that he strangled him first and then stabbed him and then hit him in the head. And I mean, I'm like,
it's his first kill. He's trying to get his stride and see like what he enjoys the most, maybe.
I don't think it really matters because either way it's overkill.
Yes.
He told authorities that he thought about going to find someone else to kill that same day, but decided to cool off by drinking a cup of coffee.
Okay.
And then he called the police and he turned himself in and he requested psychiatric help. Yeah. There has been speculation if this was done in order to rob John, but Robert took only £5.
And then he turned himself in, so money's not going to matter.
I know, it doesn't matter. And that's like the equivalent of like $50 today. Like that's not much. People bring this up because of drugs.
Oh, like he was just fiending for a drug hit or something?
Right.
I don't think so.
I don't see that either because people who are desperate for drugs don't stay the entire night, wake up, have breakfast, and, you know.
He would have like gone after him as soon as they walked in because he had to go get his hit,
like,
you know.
Or stolen while they were sleeping and left, you know. They don't do that. No. So he turns himself in and he's not declared fit to stand trial. So he's not sent to prison.
Okay.
He's sent to a high security mental hospital, Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital in Crowthorne, Berkshire, England.
Which is probably where he should have gone.
Yes. This place was first known as the Criminal Lunatic Asylum. Its first patient was a woman in 1863, which I found interesting, for committing infanticide. But over the years, it was home for a lot of like really intense, scary murders. And I'm like, that's another episode.
Yes. I bet it's haunted if it's not still open today.
The Wikipedia page for this was a gold mine for possible future episodes.
Okay. I'll wait for it.
No, like go look, Kendra. There's a lot to talk about.
Oh, you mean I should go look? Okay.
Both of us. There's a lot of people who have stayed there that we can talk about.
I have one coming up from the UK.
Okay. And this place is still running today.
Damn.
In May, it's going to have been open for 162 years.
It's seen some shit.
It has. Anyway, so Robert is at this place for a few years. And in 1977, he had the urge to kill again.
Okay.
Or he truly decided to do it because he learned of another patient's previous offenses.
Oh, another child assaulter.
He had his sights set on a man named David Francis. Francis was a convicted child molester.
Okay.
And had even committed further alleged assaults on other inmates. Initially, Robert and Francis were on the same side. A few months before Francis would meet his fate, he helped Robert hold another prisoner hostage.
Okay.
This guy was Philip Monk, and apparently he had committed some kind of homosexual attack on a mutual friend of theirs.
Okay, so they like teamed up.
Right. No one died that day, but it was sort of a precursor to what Robert would do to Francis a few months later. So I'm guessing he learned of his sexual offender status after this event, but I can't be sure. So once he decides that Francis needs to go, somehow he earned the trust of another inmate or patient, also named David, but this is David Cheeseman. They hatched up a plan to get rid of Francis.
Francis has got to go.
He does. Now, this is where some people question Robert's motive in the whole vigilante killing of sex offenders, because David Cheeseman, although he was at Broadmoor for attempted murder, he was also accused of raping a 16-year-old girl. If that was true, why would Robert pair up with him if he was out to kill sex offenders? It doesn't make sense.
Well, specific sex offenders, maybe. You can't kill them all because probably the hospital is full of them.
Well, this is talked about a lot, and I've listened to a lot of people have their opinion on this, but I had to do some digging on this David Cheeseman, and I think that's what hasn't been done.
Okay.
He now goes by David Lant. Again, it is just another example of a rumor being spread and no one going to look for the actual details.
Okay.
Robert couldn't have known about this because it hadn't happened yet.
The assault?
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense.
After helping Robert murder Francis, he was sent to Hollisley Bay Open Prison to serve a life sentence. At some point in 2004, so 27 years after they murdered Francis, he was let out from one of those work programs.
And that's where we
talked about that. So he went out for work during the day and he came back at night.
Right.
Anyway, this is when this supposed rape happened. And I'm saying supposed because he was cleared of it, which is crazy because he's an inmate that murders people.
Right.
This girl claimed to have met up with him to get money. He owed her boyfriend some money or something. She said he then convinced her to go back to his wife's caravan where he offered to give her money for sex, which she denied. He got angry, threatened her with a knife, and did it anyway. And she said this attack lasted for 5 hours until he dropped her off somewhere else.
Wow. Okay.
David denied all of this, and apparently his defense team was very persuasive because a jury of 8 women and 4 men cleared him of all the charges. Because apparently he's been incompetent for a very long time. And even after being prescribed Viagra, he can't get it up.
Well, that would definitely hinder things.
And he pretty much describes it as, I enjoyed kissing her and it was exciting for me, but I can't do it.
Okay.
So
you can't rape someone.
Yes.
I mean, there are other ways to assault a woman, though, even if you don't have a working
but
penis.
That's not what she described for 5 hours of an attack.
Yeah. So she's not credible at that point.
And all of these charges were dropped in July of 2006. So again, this was almost 30 years after Robert even knew him. I'm glad I looked into it because a lot of stories question his intentions for knowing this guy because of what he did. I'm like, whoa.
He didn't do it when
he didn't do that.
Robert knew him. Yeah.
Exactly. But we're going to get back to this murder. Robert's motive is that Francis is a sex offender, and David's motive, apparently, is that he wanted to get out of the hospital.
Like he wanted to go to prison?
Yes. He wanted to go to regular prison, and he thought if he killed someone, that would happen.
But not if you're already designated as needing psychiatric care.
So they got their hands on some plastic spoons and they fashioned them into makeshift knives.
Prison arts and crafts.
Yes. This is February 26th, 1977. They prepared to hold Francis hostage by creating a barricade with furniture in a storage room before going outside to play soccer in a hospital yard. They approached Francis afterwards while heading back to their cells. They grabbed him, put their little knives up to his throat, and dragged him into the storage room and quickly put the last finishes on this barricade so that no one could get in. Robert tied Francis to a chair using the cord of a record player and then proceeded to beat and torture him until he died.
With what? Just his hands?
Hands, whatever was in that room. Ultimately, they did garrote him.
Yeah. With the cord?
I don't know exactly what.
Okay.
This torture went on for 9 hours.
Where were all the guards?
9 brutal hours.
They must be short-staffed. How do you not know where 3 inmates are for 9 hours?
No, they know.
Oh, they're barricaded.
Knew. They're trying to get in and they couldn't.
Wow, they did some good barricading.
They did.
Damn.
They did. But I mean, 9 hours. If you are molesting children, sorry. That's what you fucking get. I
feel
can't.
Sorry for you.
After Francis was dead, they opened the door.
They're like, we're done.
And it was quite the scene to behold.
I'm sure.
Both were sent to prison after that. David to Hollisley Bay Open Prison, and Robert was sent to Wakefield Prison in West Yorkshire. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the recommendation that he never be released.
Okay, no parole.
Because apparently killing John Farrell was an act of insanity, but killing David Francis made him fit to stand trial.
He was in a psych ward. What?
Super confusing, but whatever.
Okay. They just didn't want him there anymore. They wanted him locked up.
9 hours of torture made him sane.
I think that makes you less sane, but okay. We'll go with it.
It's like one of those things, like if they commit something that heinous in a crime, how do you punish them more? And maybe prison was that.
Maybe because they could keep an eye on him easier. Obviously, it sounds like maybe the hospital was a little more lenient if they could barricade a whole room like that easily.
Yeah, and they set it up beforehand.
Yeah.
But it was after this murder that Robert earned the nickname the Brain Eater.
Did they eat his brains?
Hannibal the Cannibal.
Whoa.
These nicknames originated from the graphic nature of the crime and the fact that Francis's head was severely injured, with some reports suggesting that it was cracked open like a boiled egg.
Ew.
And there was a spoon found lodged into his ear.
But that doesn't mean they were eating his brain.
There was no brain eating.
That's good.
This was proven to be untrue. Remember, they had the knives for the spoons. It was an extra, like, let me kill you in your eardrum.
Ew.
But this was proved untrue with a post-mortem report. But these names, they just stuck because it was sensationalized in media coverage, and it's fascination of the public. Yeah.
Is this who Hannibal Lecter is based off of? Interesting.
It is. But it is after what he does next that earns him the title of the most dangerous inmate in the UK.
Okay.
He didn't wait long to kill again.
He was having a good time.
He had a goal.
To take out all the child predators. I mean, you're going to be going for a while in prison. There's a lot, I'm sure.
The next murder for me is probably the only confusing one, as far as I know. It didn't involve someone who was convicted of child abuse or raping someone. This is 46-year-old Stanley Darwood.
Okay.
He was in prison for murdering his wife.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to believe Robert and his goal of eliminating sex offenders and child molesters, then maybe Stanley confided in Robert something along those lines that made him a target. I don't know. The two were spending time together because Stanley was teaching Robert French.
Okay.
There's nothing but time in prison, and prisoners say a lot to each other.
Yeah, and they confess things and...
I've seen Prison Break, okay? They're constantly bragging to each other about whatever they've done. Yes, child molesting is not the most popular topic, but he killed his wife, so he's not a stand-up fucking guy.
Right.
We all know too well that men who are capable of murdering their wives
are doing some horrible things.
Yes.
That's your closest person in life,
exactly.
supposedly.
I'm not saying this Darwood guy was good.
Yeah.
And maybe he knew something we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's July 29th, 1978, and Robert woke up with a plan to kill as many sex offenders and child molesters as he could.
Good. I like this plan. Sorry. I'm like, is he like a prison superhero? Can we give him like a name other than Hannibal the Cannibal?
Although for some reason he landed on the number 7. He wanted to kill 7 of them.
It's a nice number.
And he had a sea of them to choose from because in Gin Pop at Wakefield, it was filled to the brim with serial rapists and child sex offenders of the worst kind.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he started with Stanley, probably because they were doing French together. I know that sounded weird.
French kissing?
Yeah. It's probably because he could get him to come into his cell.
Yeah, they were trusted already. It was easy.
He was an easy target. So Robert invited him into his cell, and he went in, and Robert garroted him and stabbed him with
spoons?
Not with spoons this time, but it was another type of makeshift knife.
Okay.
And then he stuffed him under his bed.
I shouldn't be laughing, but
I'm not sure if anyone heard or saw anything. I'm assuming not, because why even conceal his body? Because after this, he tried luring other men to come into his cell.
He wanted to put all 7 under his bed in one fell swoop.
He was not successful, and he ended up having to leave the cell to go hunt down another victim because he could not hide 7 under one bed.
Isn't he covered in blood if he was stabbing?
I have no idea. I mean, he's probably out of his mind at this point. I mean, we did say he's probably schizophrenic.
Yes, he's not in.
No.
Yeah.
Even if people didn't hear the murder, they're like, there's blood on you.
No, we're not coming in there.
I'm not going in your cell. So he made his way out through whatever this is and found another cell where an inmate was just lying on his bed.
And he's like, let's do it.
Asleep or something, or resting. This was 56-year-old William Roberts.
Okay.
He was in prison for attempting to strangle a 4-year-old girl in order to rape her.
Ew.
Robert walked right up to him and just started stabbing him in the head repeatedly with his makeshift knife.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took his head and smashed it into the wall several times until he died.
Okay. Well, that's what you get for messing with a 4-year-old. Even if you didn't actually follow through with it, you're a bad guy.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those two just filled up his cup or something.
He's ready for a nap now.
Because he immediately abandoned his plan of killing 7. Or maybe he was tired.
Yeah, it takes a lot to stab.
Instead, he calmly walked into the wing office and up to the officer. He handed over his weapon and said, "The next roll call will be too short."
What do you do if you're the police warden? You're like, okay, thank you.
Well, he's already in prison. So Robert was immediately placed into solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be the end of his killing spree.
Oh, it didn't last long.
And this is because he hasn't had the opportunity since.
He's been in solitary confinement forever?
Yes.
Okay, he's super crazy by now then. You're not supposed to be in solitary confinement more than 6 weeks or something.
He was tried for these crimes the following year in 1979. And during that trial, he admitted that when he kills people, he is imagining his parents.
Okay.
And that's why they're such brutal killings.
Yeah, he's getting all that rage out.
He does not stop. After that, he's in a cell within a cell. And this is part of the controversy of who he is and everything today.
Mm-hmm.
Monitored 24 hours a day with zero privacy. He has been in solitary confinement for over 40 years.
That's wild. It's just like the movie. It's just like Silence of the Lambs where you see him in that.
Yep.
They've shown what this does to people's brains and even mice when they put them in solitary.
The rumor is that he's kept behind not 1, not 2, but 17 locked doors because of how dangerous he is.
Okay.
Which seems ridiculous.
He's not that dangerous in my opinion.
And it's ridiculous because it just might be. Okay, everybody tells the story of the 17 locked doors. But I came upon one comment on a TikTok buried in hundreds of comments that caught my attention.
Okay.
And I did not get her approval to repeat this or talk to her to confirm this because it's social media.
She may not even be on there anymore.
I don't know. This one user said that her mother used to be one of his prison guards and now her husband is one.
Okay.
And she said it's not 17 locked doors anymore.
It's 2.
Exactly.
Is it really?
2 secured doors. So I believe that's his current situation. 17 is completely unnecessary.
Yeah, that would be really hindrance to feed him and stuff.
But I do believe the other part. So the other part is that he's in some sort of heavy, bulletproof plastic or glass box.
Okay.
And that is believed to be the inspiration for Hannibal Lecter so that they can keep eyes on him at all times.
Okay.
Which is ridiculous.
He was killing child abusers. He wasn't coming after the guards. He wasn't coming after anybody and everybody. I'm sure there's way more dangerous people.
Unless you think he's a spirit demon. Can he go through all these layers of your locked doors? It's ridiculous. So this cell within a cell was created in 1983 specifically for him.
Okay.
When they would let him out, because he needed some time outside of his cell at some point, they had to lock up every other prison mate. So everyone had to go back into their cells and be locked in so he could just like walk around for a minute.
They're treating this guy like he did a full massacre of like 50 people or something.
No.
Like he did 2 and then he turned himself in.
Well, he did 4.
But only 2 in a row within this prison for them to lock him up. Like,
but they were like, oh, he just likes to kill people in here, so we can't have him near anybody.
I mean, do they really miss the child molesters?
I mean, it is kind of a problem though.
I know. Sorry, I'm not meaning to make light of it, but
all I know is he's notorious and he's heavily feared.
Yeah. I would think, honestly, like I love Silence of the Lambs, and I would think that whoever inspired Hannibal Lecter would be a little bit more crazy, honestly.
Interestingly, he's kind of like a weird Robin Hood, though. Like,
I know. But you kind of like, when you watch the movie, you kind of like Hannibal too.
You do. He like has good logical arguments.
He's smart. And
I'm like, but don't eat them.
Yeah. Yeah,
don't
like
eat
that
them,
part.
though.
But like he helps Clarice find Buffalo Bill.
But that's
like,
fine. But you're eating people, so
yeah,
and you're keeping them around for a really long time. In a really
I haven't watched
way.
the other show, Hannibal, so I only know Silence of the Lambs. But I like vampires too.
But only when they suck your blood and they're like, "I want to keep you.
You're my new pet.
I'm not gonna just eat you and dump you. Why would I do that?"
It's a waste.
Anyway, there was a psychiatrist who started meeting with him.
Okay.
Dr. Bob Johnson. After spending a lot of time with him, interviewing him and trying to help him understand and put the abuse he experienced as a child in the past, he does not agree that he is the most dangerous person in prison.
No, I don't think so.
By a mile. There are far more dangerous people in that particular
prison
than Robert. He said that Robert is extremely intelligent and that if he could simply separate his history from the now to the present, that he would never hurt anyone again because it was all tied to the abuse of his parents.
And he just needed a good therapist to help him process that.
When he committed the murders, the rage he felt was fueled from feeling like he was being abused again in that very moment by his father.
Yeah.
And he couldn't separate the fact that he wasn't a kid anymore and that wasn't actually happening.
Okay.
He thinks he should be working and earning money to pay restitution for what he has done instead of millions of pounds of taxpayer money being used to keep him in a cage.
Right. There's no reason for it at this point.
The doctor believes that how they were treating him was barbaric and uncivilized. He doesn't cause issues, and yet they continue to isolate and punish him. He was getting better, and the prison saw this and stopped the doctor from having sessions with him.
Do they like having the most notorious prisoner or something? It must like give them some kind of street cred in the prison business or something.
I think so. In 2000, Robert was kind of over it all. He asked for the conditions of his solitary confinement to be relaxed or to be allowed to take his own life via a cyanide capsule.
Yeah.
He also asked for a pet parakeet, but he was denied all of it.
Well, I can see like prisoners don't get pets, so
And you could talk to a bird.
probably be good for his mental well-being. They already took his therapist away, which was like his one source of human connection.
And that particular doctor, he is very revered among these inmates.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact name of this inmate, but he's one of the most dangerous in UK prisons. And he wrote like a very detailed letter to this doctor when he was stopping his practice, essentially within these prisons, saying, I don't know how I'm going to be without you. You stopped me from murdering. Like, you are the best person in the world, essentially.
Right.
And now I have nothing.
Aww.
And now I have no consistency. They're talking about moving me again. I'm only supposed to be moved for a few weeks, but here I am still and this and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, he made a difference in these inmates' lives to help them see why they did what they did and to help them become human beings again.
Right. He sat there and listened to them when no one else did.
And so it's sad that Robert didn't get to continue with him.
Yeah.
But he still doesn't have a chance anyway. So In 2003, Robert was moved to Wakefield Prison's Close Supervision Center, which was built to house Britain's most dangerous inmates. He received just the slightest of changes to his situation. He was let out of his cell 1 hour a day.
Well, that's better than nothing.
To exercise. But not alone. He had 6 prison guards with him every time.
Okay.
And recently, this year, 2025, on February 26th, which is the anniversary of when he murdered David Francis.
Okay.
He's now 71 years old, and he has begun a hunger strike because his video game console, books, and music system were confiscated by prison guards.
Okay.
And his siblings are concerned. I'm not sure how many of them are still in communication with him, but his brother Paul, who's now 74 years old, mentioned that they talk regularly. And on the 26th, he got a call from Robert that he was going on this hunger strike because they took his things and that it might be the last time they hear from him.
Okay.
His brother's concerns, like how long can he endure this?
Not long.
Apparently he used to have a phone in his cell because he is in like super duper solitary confinement. There's not much he can do. Why shouldn't he have a phone? But his family believes that it was recently taken away along with all of his other things because they have not heard from him since and they can't get through to anyone to find out what's going on. So they're really
concerned. Yeah.
Worried. He's been in solitary confinement for 46 years.
That doesn't seem humane. Like, that seems like cruel and unusual punishment.
Certainly.
I think of some of the other people we've talked about and the horrible atrocities that they've committed, and they did not get subjected to this. So this seems really cruel.
It can't be explained.
No.
We've talked about serial killers that don't even go on death row, and they've murdered 60 people.
Kenneth McDuff was let out after killing people so he could kill some more people.
I think that's why this is one of those cases where it's like controversial because most people are like, let him out.
Yeah. Why is he caged?
There are thousands of comments like online that's saying he was doing God's work. Release him. Set him free. Like, release my man.
I don't know about like letting him out of prison, but like put him into a normal cell.
I know. Like, he's a conundrum to me.
And he's in his 70s now. He's not going to be running around stabbing people again.
I think he was one of the lucky ones, like not lucky in life. That's not what I mean. But in terms of how he managed to like hang on to his soul.
Yeah.
In a way. I think he was meant to kill after everything that he went through, but he had just enough humanity left in his blood that he chose to go after bad people.
Right, because so many people who have had the same kind of life end up going and killing other young boys or young girls.
Someone just like them, the same type of victim. That is what usually happens.
Yeah, at least he was going after the perpetrators.
So he did, quote, good work for the most part, but he's still a killer and he kills savagely.
Right.
At that. He has made enough comments over the years that he's not a saint. He wanted to kill. He wanted to see blood. He wanted to kill people, hurt people. He focused that energy on people who hurt people.
Right.
He's known as Hannibal the Cannibal, but he's Dexter. That's how I see him.
Yeah.
He's a Dexter guy.
And he never ate any human
No, he
remains.
never did. That's all
ridiculous.
a rumor thing. And after finally getting the help he needed as a child who experienced all of that, even though it wasn't completed, it seems like he did change, like not fully. He didn't get to finish the process with that doctor, but I don't know. It doesn't matter because we'll never know. And he's going to die there.
Well, yeah, he's close now.
It's a pretty tragic story, honestly.
It is kind of sad.
Life. Yeah. To have lived this long and to have not known one single day of peace in his entire life since he was an infant is fucking crazy. It's wild.
He never even experienced like real love or warmth from anyone. Like, it is very tragic.
Mm-hmm.
He never had a shot at a normal life, and it's sad. Like, I feel sad for this serial killer.
I see why a lot of people like stand up for him, but we don't know. Like, had he not turned himself in, what would he have done? That's the thing. He did turn himself in.
He has a conscience, whereas like he's not a true sociopath.
No, I think he has breaks. He didn't receive the help he needed. If he had gotten medication or something,
he probably would have never even killed.
Exactly.
Or maybe they should have just let him like take his parents out and then put him on meds, and he might have been just fine.
Yeah.
And like
he might have still stayed in prison, but he wouldn't have killed other people.
Yeah.
That's his story. And it's really sad.
It is.
And I do not mourn the sex offenders who have died. So
no, I can't feel sorry for anybody that he actually killed, to be honest. So I don't know what else to say about this either. Except I had no idea.
I've never heard of him.
No,
never heard of the brain eater.
I don't even think I realized that Hannibal Lecter was actually based on a real character.
Yeah, me
Not
either.
character, but person.
It makes sense since he's been in there for so long.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing this to everyone's attention. I know that none of us are feeling really good.
No, I mean,
not that we ever feel good at the end of some
I feel like there's
episodes.
not a lot to learn from this episode. It's just an interesting
It's just
story.
Wow, the world's a crazy place. I mean, and it just seems so unfair in a lot of ways that this prisoner was treated in this way when we know there's thousands.
Oh my gosh.
That are way, 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 way worse. So yeah, it just is another instance of life doesn't make sense.
It's literally because he hurt people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we can't have you around anybody.
Yeah, that's all it was.
That's rough. But that's his story. I don't know how much longer he'll be alive. I don't know what his hunger strike is going to amount to here.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything. I searched real quick to see if there's been some updates, and there isn't any.
Okay.
So we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Well, everybody, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for bringing it and putting it together on such a tight timeline. Yep. I enjoyed hearing about Robert, even though I'm sad right now. But if you enjoy this episode, we have more coming every Tuesday. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, and we would love it if you subscribe and send us a little comment or a rating or both.
Please send any of your lab reports to lucidlabpodcast@gmail.com.
And we will be back next Tuesday with another true crime that I'm putting together right now. And it's a very famous case. It will be a longer episode.
Oh, yes. And I almost did this one, but she was like, I found it. And I was like, go for it. Because
I had a book for a while.
I had a book for months because I was like, I don't have time. And so I'm going to let Kendra take it on.
It is a big one and it'll be great. You know it. So we'll have lots of great discussion, and it is something controversial. What do you know?
Of course it is.
Because nothing's black and white, as we said last week.
It's true.
Anyways, and in the meantime,
what do we say?
Stay lucid.
Stay lucid. Goodbye.
We'll see you soon.